Hello world, Noah here, and welcome back to Modern JavaScript. In this video, we're going to be talking about NPM, which is the Node Package Manager. So NPM is essentially the package manager and ecosystem of software packages for JavaScript. So you can go to their website, npmjs.com, and you can search through the thousands and thousands of packages that other people have uploaded. Now, a package is just a block of code, a chunk of code that does something for you, and a lot of people have chosen to share their packages so that others can use them in their own code. It's essentially, the idea that instead of writing everything yourself, you can use some code that other people have written to help you get started. This is very similar to, for example, pip in Python, how you could use pip to install, a tool like Django, and then you could use Django to develop a website. And the same way we could use npm to install something like Express, and then we could use Express to create a website in the same way that we could with Django. So in this video, we're going to get npm set up, then we're going to use it to install a package, and then we're going to actually use that package. So first of all, if you've already installed Node.js, then you already have npm installed, because npm is automatically installed alongside Node.js. And so in order to see if it is, we want to go ahead and open up our terminal, and you can just type the command npm-v, and you should get some sort of number. Mine right now is 6.0.1, and if you get a number like that, that means that you have npm installed correctly. If you don't have npm installed correctly, then you need to make sure that you have Node installed, because installing Node will automatically install npm. So now we're going to go ahead and open up our project and get our project set up for npm. Then we'll return to the npm registry to look for a package to use. So we'll go ahead and open up our code here, and I'm going to also pull up a terminal. And so in the terminal, we want to go ahead and get this project set up to work with npm. What we're actually going to do is make this project into a package itself. Now, we don't need to publish this package on npm for other people to use, but by making it a package, we sort of make it a part of the npm ecosystem so we can pull other packages in and all that good stuff. So the command, first you want to make sure actually that you're in the correct directory. And if you're using the terminal inside of WebStorm, it'll automatically put you there. You can see we're in the hello world directory. And you're going to just want to type npm init for initialize. You'll see it's going to tell you that it's going to walk through getting everything set up. And so first it's going to ask you for the package name. This is just the name of your package, of course, the name of your project. And it'll automatically pull the name of the folder, which is hello world, and I'm fine with that. Then it's going to ask for the version. We'll just go for the default 1.0.0. Then it'll ask for a description. If you want to write a little description about your package, you can. If you're going to publish it on npm, you definitely want a description, but we don't need to have one here for this. Then it'll ask for the entry point, which is the file that will run, the first file that will run all of your code, essentially like the main class in JavaScript, in regular Java. And so it automatically found hello-world.js, so that's good. Then a test command. This is if you had any tests that you want to run. We don't right now, so we're going to leave that blank. Then a Git repository. If you have Git set up in here, it should find that. If you have a remote, you can put it in there, but we don't need Git for this. Keywords are for npm if you're searching for it in the registry. Again, we don't need that because we're not publishing it. And then author, you can go ahead and put your name or your username, or I'm just going to leave it blank for now. The license is just the license of your code, basically what other people are allowed to do with it. And again, since we're not showing it, we can go with the default. And then it's going to put out what it thinks is our configuration file, what it's generated for us. Is this okay? Yes, it is. And so now you'll see that it's generated a file called package.json. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and it's just a basically a configuration format. So you can see that all of the information that we just put in is present here. The name of the project, the version, the main file, so on and so forth. So by having this package.json file in this folder, we have essentially said that this right here is a npm package. Okay, so now that we have npm set up, let's go back to the registry and look for a package to use. And so for the purposes of this, we're going to use a package called request to basically perform a get command on a page and get some data from it. So we're going to go ahead and search for request, and you'll see a bunch of options show up. We're just going to click on the first one. And so here's request. You can basically read a little bit about it. You can see this is exactly what we want. It'll let us put a URL in here, and then it'll go ahead and basically get all of the data from the URL and give it back to us. You can also see that it was last published 14 days ago, so we know that this is up to date. If you see something that hasn't been touched in a couple years, there's a good chance that it won't work anymore, or that it won't have all the latest JavaScript features in it, and so you might want to find something different. But this looks good, and so we know that the name is request, and that's exactly what we want to install on NPM. And of course, we're going to do this using a terminal command. Now, before we do, there are actually a couple of different kinds of dependencies, and dependencies are just other packages, other pieces of code that your code is going to use. There are dependencies, regular old dependencies, dev dependencies, and peer dependencies. Now, regular old dependencies are dependencies that your code needs in order to actually run. So if you are basically importing or requiring a library anywhere, it would belong in your dependencies. Dev dependencies are things that you use basically for your development. So something like Webpack or TypeScript, or something that your code doesn't need to run, but that you need in order to develop, would go into dev dependencies. And then peer dependencies is not used as often, but it's basically if your code relies on a version, on a package that you want the user to install themselves. Maybe you're injecting something into a prototype in that package, so on and so forth. Don't let that confuse you. We're not going to actually use peer dependencies anywhere. We're just going to use dependencies and dev dependencies. Now in this case, this request library, we're actually going to be using it in our code, so we want it to be a dependency. And so the command we're going to type in is npm install and then request, which is the name of the package. And it'll take a little while. It's basically going to look up the package that you want to install, and that was actually pretty quick. But you'll notice that it added 45 packages. I only wanted it to install request, but request actually depends on some packages itself. So we can take a look and see that request has 20 dependencies. So all of these packages need to be installed in order for request to work. And each of these packages may have their own set of dependencies, and so on and so forth. And so just by installing this one request package, we've actually installed 45 packages. And so that's just a little taste of how connected the Npm registry is. Now, before we actually write any code, there's a few things that we need to take a look at. First, you'll notice that the package.json file has changed. There's now a value called dependencies, and it's an object right here, and it has this value, this key request, and this value is, this is the latest version of the request library. So the package.json will list all of the dependencies, dev dependencies, and peer dependencies inside of it, so that NPM can know basically what code you need to run, or what packages you need in order to make your code run. You'll also notice that we got a file called package-lock.json, and this essentially lists all of the dependencies that have been installed, on your project. And so the only dependency that we asked it to install was request, but these are all of the other things that came along with it as dependencies. And so this just keeps a list of everything that's installed. Now you're not going to want to touch this file, but if you're using Git, you will want to commit it to your repository. And the last thing you'll notice is this new file this new folder called node_modules, and it's marked automatically by WebStorm as a library root. And essentially this contains inside of it all of the packages that you've installed. And so you can see that there are 45 packages here. Now, this is a WebStorm specific thing, but it basically marks all of the packages that you installed as gray, and all of the packages that were automatically installed via dependencies in orange. And so if we take a look at this request package, let's just look at it for 1 second, you'll notice that first of all, it has its own package.json file. And now this is a much larger file than we had before, but it still has those same things. It still has the name and the main and all that stuff. And then you can see here are all of the dependencies, all of the things that it needed in order to run. And then here are the dev dependencies, the things that they used in order to actually write the code, and so on and so forth. And then you can actually look, and you can look at the code, the JavaScript code that powers this request library. So that's really all that NPM does, is it downloads this code and it sticks it in a very specific place right here, so that it knows where it is, and so that you can actually use it. And so now let's go ahead and actually use it. So I'm going to delete this console.log right here, and what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to import the request library. And so the way that we'll do this is we'll just use the require syntax. We can say import request equals require, and then in quotation marks we will put request, which is the name of the library. And I guess they don't support import syntax. Okay. So just like that. So const request equals require request. And if you get something like this, unresolved function or method require, then let's go into the settings for a second, and we'll go to languages and frameworks, Node.js and NPM, and make sure to enable coding assistance for Node.js. It'll take a second to run, and then it will basically understand that we're trying to write code to work off of Node.js, and you'll see that require, the error there kind of goes away, and it knows that we're talking about the Node.js function to import a package. Okay, so now we have this variable called request, and we've imported the request package, and so now we can actually use it. And if we look right here, you can see we pass request with a URL and a callback. And so the URL, so we're going to say request, and the URL is we're going to use this http bin.org/json. It's just going to give us a standard like JSON looking response, and then we're going to want to pass the options, which we don't actually need to, and then we're going to pass the callback, and the callback takes the error, the response, and the body, just like that. And so then what we're going to do is we're just going to print out the body. We're going to say console.log body. And so basically what we've done so far is we've set this up to work with NPM. We've installed a package, a chunk of code that someone else wrote from NPM, and it was installed right here in our node modules folder. Then we were able to import it by requiring it in our code, just like that. And then we're able to use it. So instead of having to write a library ourselves that can, pull data off of the internet, we can actually just use this code that someone else wrote, and we can install it very easily by using NPM. So now let's actually go ahead and run it. I'm going to go ahead and hit run, and you'll notice that it does give us back some data. This is some JSON formatted data right here, and it does work, is the point. It connected to this http bin.org/json, and I'll quickly just pull up what it looks like in the browser. It just gives you this raw JSON document, and you can see that that's exactly what we got there. It might help if we do .parse the body, and then we can run it again, and it'll actually do a little bit of a better job of printing it, because when you print out an object in Node.js, it will print it out a little bit nicer. So as you can see, the major point isn't the code itself, but the fact that it worked. The fact that we were able to install some code that someone else wrote, and then just import it and use it just like this. So this is sort of, I'd say probably the most important thing about JavaScript, or really the biggest change that we've seen in JavaScript, is it's all about code reuse and modularity and sharing things now. The Npm Registry has tens of thousands of packages in it that can do all kinds of different things. You can make command line tools, you can make server backends, you can make server or web-based front ends, you can make games, you can make apps. Pretty much anything that you could possibly think of can be done using JavaScript, and you can find some packages that will help you get started on NPM. So I highly encourage you to check out NPM, find some interesting looking packages, install them and see what you can do. A lot of these packages have really, really good documentation, so you should be able to get started fairly easily, assuming that you're comfortable programming in JavaScript. So that's all for NPM for now. This is a really important video, and I hope this all made sense, because every time you start a new project, you're going to set up that package.json file, and you're going to install stuff from NPM. So this is absolutely fundamental. In the next video, we're going to take a look at Yarn, which is a package manager that's built on top of NPM, but has some added benefits. It's a little bit easier to use, and so on and so forth. And so that's all for this video. As always, subscribe if you want to see more, comment with what you want to learn. If you like this video, click the like button. I'll see you guys soon with some more videos. Bye for now.